They are the team in the Pacific Division that many fans love to hate. We talk Vegas Golden Knights on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
Your Locked On Golden Knights, your daily podcast on the Vegas Golden Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. You can like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing. On today's episode, we welcome in the hosts of Locked On Golden Knights and discuss why their team is so disliked. We'll also get news involving the hockey team in Sin City, and that includes them losing their number one goalie before the season has started. My name is Eddie Garcia, your host for Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for almost 30 years, for the past 20 plus years at Fox Sports Radio Network, where I'm a co-host, sidekick, reporter, and NHL analyst. Also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years, and of course, a passionate LA Kings fan. So we continue our rival reports with the countdown to the new season, and we welcome in the hosts of Locked On Golden Knights, and they are Tony Cardasco and Chris Golick. Guys, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
What's up, Eddie? Yeah, I like that open. And this is going to be the Royal Rumble, the Kings and the Knights. We like it.
Sounds good. Well, that leads me into my first question, and I'll start it off with you, Tony. I talked on a recent episode about the LA Kings and who their rival is at the moment. And I also kind of threw out there who's the team you love to hate. And for me, I was dumb enough to think that was the same team, because it is for me, and that's the Anaheim Ducks. But it was different for a lot of Kings fans. A lot of them said the Sharks they thought were the biggest rival, and we've met them a few times in the playoffs, and that helps. But the team that they loved to hate was the Golden Knights. Now I'm going to ask Chris about that in a second. But Tony, who is the Golden Knights' rival in their brief history so far?
Eddie, I really do believe that it is the Colorado Avalanche, because they just, they're the best team now. They're out of the same conference. We've had some games where there's been some controversies. We had a big Nathan McKinnon hit on Nolan Patrick that went unnoticed by the National Hockey League. It all started, I think, but you can make a case really for the Kings. I went back and looked at the historical data, and this is a series that is 12-12-1. It is cut right down the middle. And VGK feels as though they might have some revenge against the Kings. We like what you've done with the addition of Kevin Fiala on that top line. But, Drew Doughty, and Chris, you alluded to the quote the other day about Drew Doughty trying to get things stirred up in the 2018 season, was it?
Season 1, 17-18, yeah.
Yeah. And you want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. So
this could be a rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely provided us with our first locker room material, so much to the point where in that very first playoff series, in the Golden Knights history, of course, it made the ice in the pregame show. I don't know if you saw that, Eddie. I don't know if you caught that or not, but they put his exact quote on the ice during the pregame intros and the shows and everything, where there's no way there'll be a better team than us. I think they actually played the audio. Now that I think they actually played the audio along with it, now that I think about it. And that certainly got the team fired up. And I think the Kings are rivalry number one from the Vegas side, at least.
Well, it is an interesting dynamic, because before the Golden Knights came around, you could argue that Vegas was a big Kings town. For hockey fans that had been there for a while, there were a lot of LA Kings fans, and I'm sure it makes sense that a lot of them decided to switch when you guys got your own team. But so there's this. Do you feel, Chris? Let me ask you first. Do you feel the hate that is out there? Is that something you guys actually recognize? Is it? I know it's on social media. You're both nodding your head, so. What do you think about that? Does it seem unfair to you? Do you embrace it? What are your thoughts on it? Okay.
Yeah, it's a role I've become comfortable with. So as far as the hate, there's been a shift in the hate. Let's start with season 1, the unexpected run from everybody in the entire sports world Of course, that run to the Stanley Cup final season #1. It went from who are the Golden Knights? This team is going to be terrible to all of a sudden the expansion draft was created in a way with the rules to benefit VGK better than any other expansion team. So it went from that to basically a level of jealousy to an extent, because it was, I mean, you have franchises that waited how long to make playoff runs and Stanley Cup runs. Obviously, the Kings are not in that world. They've had an amazing run. Them, along with my former love, the Chicago Blackhawks. You can kind of see the Marc-Andre Fleury jersey back there with both sides of it. But you look at franchises like Toronto and Edmonton, and how long it's been for them to make these types of runs. So that's where I think the hate just kind of started from. It was a bit of jealousy, but now obviously with all these crazy trades and free agency moments and things VGK is doing, it has rubbed a lot of the hockey world the wrong way. And I mean, me and Tony have certainly discussed that at length on our show, and it's something that we definitely get and understand to a degree, I guess. There's a lot of people calling VGK the New York Yankees, if you will, the evil empire of the NHL, just try and do all these crazy moves every single season to win. And, now we've been put in a different opportunity. I'm sure you can hit on that in a little bit, with Leonard being out and the ability to make even more roster shuffles via a possible big trade coming up this week or a big free agency signing. So, yeah, VGK doesn't sit still. VGK makes a lot of polarizing moves, giving away notable talent for free, obviously. And that has rubbed the hockey world the wrong way. And it's unfortunate. I get it. And I don't know if it was you, Eddie, that tweeted out, or someone tweeted, or maybe Tony put it out there. The night the Sharks played VGK in like game 78 of this past regular season, it showed the outline of the United States of America. It showed all the states that were teal supporting the Sharks that game. And then, of course, Nevada was the only gold state that game. So that was it's kind of fun. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, the Sharks are not a rival. No, the Sharks are not a rival of VGK anymore. Some people might believe it. It was early on, but now they've just owned them. Bruce Cassidy's owned them when he's been with Boston.
Yes.
On and on.
The Pacific as a whole, Tony, but we'll talk about that in our shows another time.
Yeah. But, one of the signs, Eddie, that there's hatred. I don't think the teams, let's start with, the other teams in the National Hockey League now. I don't think that they readily want to be dance partners. They don't want to just give up players, to the VGK. VGK likes to give away players, but teams don't want to really trade with VGK, not as easily. I don't think so. Behind the scenes, there's got to be animosity, from other NHL clubs, and then you have the fans. VGK fans like to stir it up in a major way. Early success, and now they're spoiled, so to speak. And I think that you have this VGK team and its fans now. They really are not liked, because they do go after other fans, and they like to mix it up as well.
Yeah, it is interesting, because I think on the one hand, there is certainly jealousy. I think there's no denying that. And then there's also, I certainly can't blame Vegas Golden Knights fans for the way they feel about all the success they've had. I mean, I think if I had a team and they had so much success in a short amount of time, I'd probably be a little bit arrogant about it as well. So, and I think a lot of other.
So you're saying we're arrogance?
Well.
You're saying we're arrogance?
I think there's a little bit of arrogance there. Yeah. But I think it's earned.
It's fair.
Earned.
It's fair.
Right?
It's fair.
So Chris is the season ticket holder. Keep in mind, and I am the person along for the ride here, and I try to play it down the middle or just be transparent. So but he's the guy he's starting to stir things up.
Well, let me ask you first, Tony, then, because obviously, to the delight of some, the Vegas Golden Knights did not make the playoffs last year. And certainly there were a number of injuries, but was it just that simple, that they just had too many injuries, or was there more to it than just that?
Nah, it wasn't just the injuries. You can just lean on the 500-man games that were missed, but they play shenanigans, the front office, with the salary cap. And I think that they get burned a lot because they're trying to mess around with, playing. They've been shorthanded with players in the past due to the salary cap. They think that they're the smartest people in the room. And to me, I just feel that this VGK team might have had issues in the locker room as well. It's starting to come out. We heard from Max Pacioretty about the lack of accountability within, the VGK locker room. And I mean, that's again a reflection on the team, the coaches, and the front office. And the front office is definitely under fire. I'm sure we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But yeah, I think there was much more to it. The antiquated system of Pete DeBoer was so predictable by the end of the season. I could tell you where they were going to shoot, how they were going to enter into the zone, all of that. And then goaltending wasn't very good across the board other than Logan Thompson. Chris?
I'm with you on that, Tony. Yes, the injuries and the man games was fact. It did happen, but everything you said does make sense, Tony. There were some real big games down the stretch that you can't lose that game to the Sharks, obviously, on home ice with a 2-goal lead going to the third. They were in it all the way. I believe we talked about this until game number 80. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of the things, Tony, you said do make sense about the lack of creativity, lack of identity, all the things we heard about in the exit interviews, which I think ultimately is what did DeBoer in.
So you mentioned head coaching. You're going into the 6th season of existence, and now you're on your 3rd head coach. We'll talk more about that in a second. But when you're hiring that many coaches in a short amount of time, the people that are doing the hiring eventually are going to find themselves looking for a job, I would think. So I ask you, Chris, how hot is the seat on President George McPhee and or GM Kelly McCrimmon?
So this is an answer that this is a very unpopular opinion that's gotten me roasted a few times, but let me give you a real quick rundown of Vegas Golden Knights. Stanley Cup run, the not a major situation against the Sharks, within 3 games of the Stanley Cup seasons 3 and 4. Season 5, all of the injuries, man games lost. Things are going just fine as far as I'm concerned. McCrimmon is a polarizing individual that comes across very strange with our local media. It's something else me and Tony have hit about. And it's very easy to not like him. It's very easy to make fun of him and, all the weird things that he does. But at the end of the day, I just try to simply look at the results of the team. I feel the season 5 roster heading into last season was the best roster that this team had on paper and was capable of making a run, health pending, of course. That obviously changed. So my perspective is I have no issues at all with McCrimmon. I think when I look at the results and what's happened, I think he's done a very good job with this roster, starting with creating one of the best expansion teams or the best expansion team in the history of all professional sports. I look at seasons 2, 3, and 4, and season 5, I'll chalk for bad luck for now. But if season 6 goes the same, doesn't get off to a good start, if our goaltending mightily struggles, if Cassidy can't figure out a way to continue to dominate the Pacific, keyword continue, because he's done a very good job in his brief games against, because obviously they only play the Pacific a few times a year in the other conference. But you put all that into a blender, you simply look at the results. I'm fine with McCrimmon. I don't think the seat is even that hot. Or I think Foley has to sign off on everything that happens with this team. I don't care, at least in the higher stuff. I guarantee they had to convince Foley to move on from Fleury. I know they had to probably sit down and explain the Pacioretty situation. So if McCrimmon can pass all of these hurdles, if you will, I don't know if anything can get McCrimmon let go from Foley, to be honest with you, but I don't think the seat is that hot. I look at the results of seasons 1 through 5. I'm good with how things have been, but I am concerned about season 6 and beyond, not just with our upcoming season, but 2-3 years from now, when we still have $28 million tied up between 4 players that'll be over age 36 at that time. I just made that up. It's somewhere in that neighborhood, but yeah.
Well, we'll have more with the Locked On Golden Knights guys in just a second, but if you're hanging out with some friends and putting a few back, a few become a few too many, as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. No, you live nearby. You can make it home. It's no big deal. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over anyway? Even so, what's the worst thing that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. Often there's still doesn't stop people from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're going to be okay after driving after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. We continue with Tony Cardasco and Chris Golick, the hosts of Locked On Golden Knights. And you kind of talked about it a little bit, Chris, and Tony, I want to get your perspective. But here in Los Angeles, we had the Rams have a philosophy, and even their general manager made T-shirts. He said, F those picks. And what he was talking about was the hell with the future. We're in it to win it now. And they made a lot of major trades. They got a lot of big stars, and they won the Super Bowl. So it worked out for them. So it seems like the Vegas Golden Knights have a similar philosophy. I was wondering if you thought that philosophy, it certainly seems to sit well with Chris. Do you think it sits well with the fan base? In other words, we're going to go for it. And even if we don't make it, we're not going to play it safe.
It's been an interesting offseason for the Vegas Golden Knights. And to me, you can't make so many trades where all you get back are, quote, future considerations and, build a franchise and solidify your roster. And the top six is going to be pretty good, we feel, this upcoming season. The bottom six, particularly line three, I think Chris has talked repeatedly about the third line and his concerns about that. I really feel that seat is scorching right now for Kelly McCrimmon. Chris and I are in different directions on this one. I just feel that the fan base is getting tired of him. Those eyebrows are killing us there in his pressers. The guy, continually lies to us about what's going on with the team. Yes, there is some validity to what Chris says, is that they have to protect the team and all that. The salary cap concerns, major issue. They talk about teams that are up against the cap being successful. This team, I feel, can implode at any given moment. I think it's really a very fragile organization right now. And for Kelly McCrimmon to be successful, I think he's put his chips all in. Pardon, the Vegas pun and all that. He's all in on Jack Eichel. And if Eichel and this team succeed, then he's going to brush his shoulders off. But if they don't, he's going to be out looking for a job by December.
Well, I think also one of the things he's banking on is a new head coach. I mentioned it earlier, but Bruce Cassidy comes in after a pretty successful run in Boston. Maybe his time had come there. I know there's some things behind the scenes as far as some players maybe didn't like playing for him anymore, but he was very successful, and now he comes to Vegas. So, Chris, let me ask you, how do you like the hire, and do you think he's the guy to get the Golden Knights back into the playoffs this year?
I like the hire, definitely. It was kind of funny, though, how Jake DeBrusk demanded a trade. Then all of a sudden, Cassidy is out. So now DeBrusk is happy. And all of a sudden, Bergeron re-signs, and they're kind of getting the band back together. So I do wonder, me and Tony have talked about this a lot in our show, the power of the exit interviews where the players meet with the general manager and kind of talk about the season. I think that did Barry Trotson, that did DeBoer, and that did Cassidy. And so I'm very interesting just to kind of see how all that plays out now in the NHL as the seasons come to an end. But I do like the hire of Cassidy. Nothing but success, right? I mean, McPhee actually fired him a long, long time ago. And then Cassidy went back down through the ranks, cut his teeth again in the AHL, had nothing but success with Providence. And then he takes a lot of the players he developed in Providence and goes right to the Boston Bruins now. And 6 seasons of playoff hockey, if I'm not mistaken, is the stat line there. And all of a sudden he's on the outside looking in, one Stanley Cup final as well in that mix. So I like the work that Cassidy has put in. There are some concerns about how he is with the younger players and things like that. Well, that's not a problem in Vegas because we don't have too many younger players. So we're good with that. F those picks, as you would say. Right. Although we have developed some players. Me and Tony had to dig a little bit, but there are some players we have developed from the ground up and are in the process of doing so as well. Tony, that was just for you. But Cassidy's going to be fun. He does have a good record against the Pacific as well. I don't have the numbers in front of me because I'm not a very good media person, but trust me, folks, he's done very well against the Pacific because other people have said so. I'm looking forward to the changes. I'm looking forward to creativity. I'm looking forward to more toughness. And I think most importantly, I'm looking forward to the team reestablishing an identity, something I don't believe we had in the entire DeBoer era. I think the moment Gallant was let go, controversial, of course, they just named a hockey rink after Gallant too somewhere in New York. Tony, enough you caught that, but so yeah, he's going to do good things. We'll see how DeBoer does down in Dallas. But since Gallant was let go by the VGK, things have been different on the identity front. And I really think that should be Cassidy's A1 objective come, about 2-3 weeks from now when players start returning, is teaching them whatever the identity is going to be. It needs to be a clear and concise identity for how this team is going to approach season 6.
Well, Tony, Bruce Cassidy is going to start with a little adversity before he's even gotten together with his team. The big news this week, of course, is that Robin Lehner is going to need hip surgery and is going to miss the entire upcoming season. I know you guys have talked about this a lot, I am sure. So what is the move for the Vegas Golden Knights? Are they forced to go with what they've got and see how it works out, or where do they go from here?
Well, first of all, coming up, that big exhibition game here against the Kings on September the 26th. And I feel as though they're going to already enshrine Bruce Cassidy into some Hall of Fame, because they're giving out these little statues, like a bust like you would see, and with the coach going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, they never did this for Marc-Andre Fleury. That's where this organization's at. Oh, yeah. Oh, we're talking about goaltending. Oh, yeah. You guys, it must not be so happy there in Los Angeles. Chased Robin Lehner in that game, that 6-2 game back in October. And then things started to really go sideways for the VGK. Oh, yeah. And you knocked out Mark Stone, too. As far as where they're going with goaltending, Eddie, I think, and Chris and I have discussed this at length, I think they need someone like a Semyon Varlamov, a proven goaltender. They have money now under the cap as they push Robin Lehner off into the LTIR. 3 injuries, for Lehner. And there was a guy that just, when he fell, he just could not get back on his feet. He was just lumbering all over. I called him the Walrus at one point last season. That was my nickname for him. But he had the shoulder injury and the surgery, the knee, and now the hip. And so those are 3 major injuries. I made the prediction that he might not ever play for VGK again. He might just go back to Sweden and hang out in the meatball section at IKEA or whatever they do back there and never come back. But, as far as goaltending, they do have someone with a small sample size in Logan Thompson. He's probably going to be number 1. They picked up a great find for VGK, Michael Hutchinson, who might be in the mix as well. And then Laurent Brossoit, who, he just can't stop any of the pucks that are up high in net. And that's the situation. LT should be number 1 heading into the season. If this is what the roster is going to look like, we don't know if Brossoit is going to be. I call him Brossoit. We don't know if he'll be back because he's been injured too. So they might have a pretty decent team on the LTIR heading into this season, but right now they need a proven goaltender. That's what they need.
Well, I think the hot seat for Kelly McCrimmon, if it is hot, certainly hitching his wagon to Robin Lehner and letting Marc-Andre Fleury go certainly is not helping his situation.
He didn't even get a bust. He didn't get a statue. I mean, nothing.
Fleury's got a statue.
Did he get a statue?
The save statue.
Okay, he did get a statue. I stand corrected.
Yeah,
but they want one outside of T-Mobile now. But Bruce Cassidy gets a bust like he's being enshrined already.
If you guys want statues, come to LA. We've got statues for everybody outside of the former Staples Center. It's ridiculous, but
crypto.com.
Yes, well, we're getting used to that. Chris, let me ask you. You mentioned Jack Eichel earlier. Obviously, they've invested a lot in a guy who hasn't really delivered at this point. Now, granted, he wasn't playing on some very good teams. He's playing on the best team he's ever played on at this point. But what is the belief that Jack Eichel can lead a team to a place he's yet to do that?
So first of all, let's see what a healthy Eichel can do. I think he started off very well last season for his first 2 or 3 weeks. Dude breaks his thumb. And I remember he broke his thumb, and it was actually a Saturday afternoon game.
It was
the King.
The Florida game.
It was the Florida game.
I was there. Yeah.
But I remember me and my son Christopher were at the Saturday matinee game against the Kings.
Yeah.
And the wonder if Eichel was going to play. There was no pregame skate. There was no indication one way or another. And then, of course, Eichel is one of the first players off after the goaltender. And I immediately noticed that he wasn't taking faceoffs or anything. And we learned later he played the last 13, 12, 15, whatever amount of games it was on a broken thumb. And, I can't write if my thumb isn't working, at least not very well. I definitely couldn't open hockey cards all day like I do very well if my thumb wasn't working.
I'm Italian. I can't even speak if my thumb's broken.
There you go. Exactly. Definitely not going to eat spaghetti. But going back to Eichel, he needs to be that leader. And just a small thing that I noticed, we had our celebrity softball game, VGK against the Vegas Raiders, obviously. And Eichel was out there, and he was out there with the fans, having fun with the team. He even did a cartwheel when he hit a home run in his celebration. And this is all fun, weird stuff I'm bringing up here. My point is, Eichel has this perspective that he's not liked around, his former team, the way he was in the locker room. He's a cancer and all these things. In the small sample size with Vegas, and then just all the outside of the hockey stuff I've seen from him, I think he's great. I think his teammates appreciate him. I think the relationship is good. And I really think the new start for Eichel was important, just so he can shed his old skin of that character he had in Buffalo. As far as on his on-ice performance, he needs 90 points. He needs to be greater than a point per game player, just because of all the scoring we're missing, first and foremost. But he needs to be, we keep hearing generational talent, generational talent, generational talent. Well, with what this team has given up, basically, because, you can start with Marc-Andre Fleury and then the situation with Pacioretty and other trades that have happened. This has been parlayed, another Vegas pun for you, but all this has been parlayed to Jack Eichel. Eichel needs to be that generational talent that everyone says he is. And I think most importantly, on the VGK side, we have never had a player in Vegas that can simply put a game outside of Marc-Andre Fleury. We've never had a player that can put the game on their back and just take over. We've needed that in the playoffs, obviously, against the Caps. We could have certainly used something like that. Otherwise, most famously in our 2 seasons when our scoring would completely dry, in the conference final and conference final equivalent with the whole bubble scheduling thing, our scoring just went absolutely dry. So someone like Jack Eichel on the power play and just to take over games is what this team needs. And I think a healthy Jack Eichel with this much firepower around him, I think he is going to succeed. And Cassidy obviously has to make this priority number 2 outside of reestablishing our identity.
Well, the Golden Knights' pain last year was obviously the Kings' gain. With Vegas not making the playoffs, LA was able to get that 3rd spot and get in. So let me close it out by asking you both, does Vegas return to the playoffs this season? Tony, you can go first.
Okay, yeah. Let me first of all go back to Eichel. Okay, I posted on Twitter yesterday a video of Pistol Pete Maravich, one of the best ball handlers in NBA history, and I compare Maravich a little bit to Jack Eichel in that they both had these passes that no one could handle, and they would have had throughout their careers. Eichel now, to date, would have so many more assists if he had players around him that could handle the puck. This guy was amazing. I got to tell you, Eddie, for me, he was by far the best skater. He was the best player on the ice for VGK, but he didn't have the supporting cast or the chemistry around him, or the players that knew that the puck was coming from all different angles. And I think it cost this team last season. And the only player I felt that he gelled with is gone, and that was Max Pacioretty. When those two were on the ice, I felt like at times they could have been unstoppable. And so to me, yes, Jack Eichel to me is the franchise of the franchise. And he can skate so well. And I didn't realize his lower body strength and the way that he glides into the zone. And suddenly he has this second gear and this acceleration where no one can stop him. As far as VGK coming back this season, I have question marks across the board. And I'm going to start, with goaltending. And I'm going to talk about, Logan Thompson. Is he the man? I like him. He's really solid. He learned a lot. The mentor for him was Marc-Andre Fleury. He's got a little Fleury in him. He's got a little cockiness. He's got the swagger. But can he withstand an entire season? I think he's a very good, durable goaltender. And I feel as though he's got a great career ahead of him. I don't know if this is the time yet. Well, only time will tell, obviously. And then what's behind him? I still feel they need, if they're going to make moves, They need to have a goaltender who's proven. When you look at goaltenders, do you go, okay, Thompson, Hutchinson, Brossois, can those goalies win you Stanley Cup? No, absolutely not. So I think that they might just squeak into the playoffs. I think they're going to have a really difficult start this season, but I think they're one of those borderline teams. Chris?
So as far as VGK making a playoff run, I think you just kind of lump everything together and you look at the West right now. I mean, Colorado, Minnesota, Edmonton. Let's just pencil those three in right now, make it nice and easy. Let's pencil those three in right now. I'd like to pencil Calgary in, but obviously they've had some very famous changes right now. So if my math is right, that's going to leave us like 8 teams for the last 6 spots. And the teams that you can consider for those last spots, obviously, we're going to start with St. Louis, Dallas, Nashville, Calgary, the Kings, the Knights, the Canucks, and then even Seattle. They've made some moves where they're starting to put a team together out there. They could even contend for one of the lower playoff spots. I do see Vegas and definitely the Kings coming back. The Kings have made some outstanding moves, and I'm looking forward just to watching the Kings every time they come to town this year and seeing what they've done. And Anze Kopitar is one of my favorite players to watch right now in the National Hockey League. Love the way he plays the game and leads the team, I think, more importantly. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to say what teams are not going to be knocking on the door. Sharks and Ducks, I think Ducks are close, but I think they're still a year or two away. Winnipeg, Chicago, Arizona, just stop it right there. So basically Dallas, Nashville, the Kings, even the Kings are probably safe right now, but Dallas, Nashville, Vegas, Vancouver, Seattle are the bubble teams. 2 of those teams are not going to get there. Vancouver would have been a playoff team if you take the implied stats when Boudreau was brought in there. So that's another thing to look at. Vancouver's going to have a much better season, I think, than they did last year. Seattle's going to take a step forward. If I had to handicap teams that I think might be on the outside looking in versus last year's comparables, Calgary could be in a tough spot. They've gone through a lot of changes, but they still got Daryl Sutter, so not a whole lot's going to change. I think Seattle, they got a little work to do still. The Ducks aren't going to take a step forward yet. I think Vegas does squeak in, and I mean, there's a good chance Vegas Kings first round again. That'd be fun.
That would be fun, and I'm sure a lot of Kings fans would be excited about that. Speaking of Vegas, before we close it out, if you would like to place a wager on the Kings or the Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup, go to betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, combat sports, esports, even golf. Head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me. That was Tony Cardasco and Chris Golick, your hosts for Locked On Golden Knights. Really appreciate the time. Looking forward to see. It should be an interesting season for the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm looking to see how it all ends up, what they're going to do with the Goaltending situation, the new coach, and everything else. But excited about the upcoming season. And again, thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Make sure you're here for that exhibition game. It's going to be so exciting. You'll get your Bruce Cassidy statue.
I have to be there for that. That's going to definitely get me to drive on over. Thanks, guys. It was great getting to talk to you, and looking forward to doing it again sometime.
Thank you.